Sure. So, hi guys, welcome back to Overtime Heroics MMA. I'm Martin Hamilton. I'm joined today by Mason and Danny. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man.
Doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
No worries. Anytime. It's always a pleasure to have someone from across the Atlantic joining us. So,
Definitely. I've been.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just saying that to kick things off, guys. We had a bit of a insane UFC card last night, so there's no better place to start than that. What did you make of the card?
To be honest, I'm going to put it up there with top 10 cards we've had of all. Do I say? Yeah, I'm going to go top 10 of my all-time favorite cards of all time from last night, just because obviously fans were back and I didn't realize how much I've missed the fans. That first fight with, I can't remember the two women's name, but the women's fight that started the night off, just the atmosphere from there out, it wasn't even half filled by that point, and the crowd were going wild. And what a fight for the first fight! But throughout the whole night, we had some great fights, especially the main card. Obviously, the first two fights, they didn't end how we wanted them. The first fight, Anthony Smith and Jimmy Crute, ended with Jimmy's knee ended up going or his ankle. I don't know what it was in the end, but he kept rolling his ankle. And then obviously, as we've seen in the second fight in the main card, unfortunately, what happened to Anderson Silva happened to Chris Weidman, and it's unfortunate. I hope he has a speedy recovery, but apart from them two fights, I don't think we could have complained about last night, and that's why it's top 10, especially with the co-main event. Fug Rose was back. She's got the title, and I had that fight 50-50 more or less. I expected it to be similar to the Zhang Weili and Joanna fight, for it to go the distance, but to be a great 25 minutes. Not once did I expect Zhang Weili to be knocked out within the first couple of minutes of the fight, but that's the fight game, and I can't complain about the main event. I'm one of Usman's huge fans, and I think I put in the group chat last night, I don't think many people agree with me yet, but I'm saying Usman's the welterweight GOAT ahead of GSP.
Yeah, I mean, that's a hot take, but in terms of last night, I've only been watching UFC pretty much since it came back from COVID. It's quickly become my favorite sport, and I think that was easily the best event I've watched so far. I mean, outside of Chris Weidman, hopefully makes a recovery. I'm pretty sure there was not a single bad fight last night. Just from the start too, the Chiling Ayori versus Jeff Molina, that was arguably the best fight of 2021 so far. And then just the knockouts, Thug Rose, she got it done. I was rooting for her. I didn't see it playing like that. I thought Zhang Weili was going to win. I thought it was going to be a back and forth situation like it was with Joanna. A minute in, boom. And also that was a good stoppage. I know she was complaining, but I don't know if she was out, but she was not defending herself. And then the main event, Usman got done. For people who still call him a boring fighter, slap yourself. Because it's back-to-back fights where he's had big knockouts.
And I think that's the bonus that he showed going to Trevor Whitman over in Team Elevation. Because since he's been there, I think it's 2 out of 3 his last fights have all been KOs. And for a guy that was like labelled snoozeman, that's pretty amazing. And it's a good thing for the UFC as well, because the UFC, they don't like having boring champions. So now they've got this champion who pals about with Francis Ngannou. He's now knocking people out. He's probably got arguably one of the best knockouts you'll ever see in the UFC last night. That was an absolute piston. So Dana White's going to be rubbing his hands, and now he's got that Kobe Covington rematch to set up as well, and it's very exciting for Pineiro.
100%. I think Kamaru has just proven the last year or so what he is about since moving to Trevor Whitman. I think at the time speaking, Trevor Whitman's the best coach in the game at present, and I don't think many people could dispute that. Look at like we're going on about now. Last night, Fug Rose getting the belt back, and then Usman defending the belt against a real tough opponent in Masvidal. Obviously, the last fight, it was 6 days notice for Masvidal. Yeah, like we've seen, the fight didn't go the same way, but it ended up with the same result as such, with Usman getting his hand raised. And my personal opinion was that it was going to be the exact same as last time. I thought Usman was going to keep him on the ground for 25 minutes, and I wouldn't blame him because Masvidal is one of the top strikers at the moment in the welterweight division, and to see Usman be willing to strike with him it was great to see, because I'm a huge fan of Usman, and I was a bit concerned if he was going to strike, because I didn't know if Masvidal was going to land one of those highlight reel knockouts like he did with Ben Askren, like he did with Darren Till, but Usman with his own highlight reel knockout, and I don't think you could complain about the fight last night.
See, I think that might have been part of Usman's plan, is to keep him in the ground, and then when he got him to the ground, like Jorge jumped for that flying knee, and Usman took him down. I don't think Usman was expecting the volume of strikes Jorge was landing from his back, because he was landing those amazing elbows from his back, and like, as we've seen in the GSP Michael Bisping fight, those kind of elbows, they can slash your face up. So I think Usman was a bit like, fuck that, I'll just go with my feet.
I think one thing I question too is this knocking out Masvidal, is that enough to sort of move Usman into more of a mainstream superstar? I think a lot of these fighters right now aren't as, like, Ngannou is a big name because he has all these knockouts. Izzy's a big personality, and I don't think Usman gets the respect at times because he has a very like reserved personality. Doesn't have these big callouts. Besides the back and forth a little bit with Colby Covington, but I think knocking out Masvidal and just all the hype that led to that fight, I think this could definitely promote, like, sort of transform him into becoming a much bigger name.
100%. I think obviously, like you're saying, I think he will become more of a household name now, just because Masvidal, the 2019 he had, you can't dispute, was one of the greatest years a fighter has had in terms of stardom and the fame that he gained from that year. And I think now that Usman has defeated Masvidal in the way he did, in terms of the knockout, I think a lot more eyes are going to be on Usman, just because no matter what, say when Masvidal eventually fights again, a lot of eyes will still be on Masvidal just because of those highlight reel knockouts. And I think now Usman knocked him out, I think Usman would have got some of those eyes on him. Maybe not as such as people in the arena, because even after the fight, they were still booing him. But I think a lot more, how do I say it? The casuals will still go towards Masvidal, but I think the hardcore fans will. Well, the hardcore fans appreciate Usman anyway, but I think you'll get a lot more fans appreciating Usman's ability.
I think a big thing too is, like, in terms of like you say, like the casuals and respecting the guy, Usman never had that sort of signature knockout. Like, he had TKOs of Colby, TKO of Gilbert. But when you look at Masvidal, knocked out Darren Till cold, knocked out Ben Askren cold. Usman slept Masvidal. And the picture of him with, like, all the sweat going off Masvidal's face, I mean, that was a cold knockout by Usman.
100%. I remember watching. I've seen it live, and my first thought was, I didn't expect that from Usman against Masvidal. My jaw was dropped. I was just thinking, wow. Obviously, I knew he was capable, but I didn't know if it was capable against Masvidal, who, as everyone knows, has a really good chin. I think he's only had 2 TKO or KO defeats in his 15 defeats, I think. But yeah, I was surprised how it happened. But like you say, that image of the sweat going everywhere, it's great image.
No, absolutely. It was like one of those kind of highlight reel knockouts that, as Danny was saying there, that can make a fighter and push them into that kind of stardom. Because what Mason was saying as well about, like, I'll air quote it, like, casuals, I think he's spot on, because before, like, when Usman was wrestling people to death, it's not very appealing to people outside the bubble of MMA. Let's see, when you watch Conor McGregor, or you watch Jorge Masvidal or Francis Ngannou, these are all guys who can knock people dead with one punch. And the outer, like, kind of people out of the MMA hardcore bubble, that appeals to them. Like, folk who are going to, like, lie on top of somebody, as they call it, and, like, hug them. That's not very appealing to the fans, like, rightly or wrongly. And, like, Usman, his kind of profile is doubling since he moved to Trevor Whitman's gym, and I think that's it's very impressive at Usman, because Usman was at a great camp. He was doing great things. He was a champion, but it wasn't enough for him. He had to uproot his whole life. He had to uproot his family's life, go all the way to Denver, the mile-high city. He had to go all the way there to train under one of the best striking coaches in the game. And now you're seeing it. You're seeing that his striking is now almost on par with his wrestling, and it makes him a terrifying opposition for any fighter.
I want to ask you boys a question. Obviously, it looks like Colby Covington Usman 2 is going to be next up, probably in the next couple of months-ish time. I'm guessing around September, October, because I know Usman wants a bit of time off. But how do you see that fight going? I think Usman's going to finish Colby, because we've seen how he was in the first fight, and especially now under Trevor Whitman, he's utilising his jab, and he's got one of the best jabs in the game at present. And I think now his striking has improved a hell of a lot more under Trevor Whitman, but I think he's going to finish Colby earlier. What do you guys think?
I can go first. I think Kamaru's going to knock out Colby. We already knew that Kamaru could out-wrestle other wrestlers. And the question, I think a little bit is against strikers, just knocked out Gilbert Burns, knocked out Jorge Masvidal. This should leave no question. I think Usman's going to be able to keep it standing for most of the time if he has to. He obviously can't take it to the ground, but I think he'll be able to keep it standing and knock out Colby. That will be fun. That will be so fun and satisfying to see Colby get knocked out, I have to say.
I think so as well. I think he'll win through stoppage, but I feel that I always underestimate Colby Covington, and he always comes out. I feel because he's such a polarising figure and such an unlikable figure, that his actual in-cage ability is hugely underrated, but underappreciated as well. I was looking at the scorecards for that first fight today, actually, and they were neck and neck. Let's see, before Pineiro landed that big shot that broke his jaw, and no, he broke his jaw in the round before. I'm talking rubbish. But see, when he hit that shot that dropped him, and I know people were saying it was an early stoppage. I don't think it was, personally. It was a very close fight. I know Kamaru's obviously improved, but we've no seen Colby. So Colby might have improved as well. He might be going like this, because that's the thing as well. Look, everyone reacts different to a defeat. But see, I know Colby lost a lot early in his career, but he went on a major streak. So see now, he get beat off Kamaru, and he's seen Kamaru rise his game. There's nothing in my head to tell me that Colby won't rise his game as well, and we might see the best version of Colby Covington that we've seen. And could this version of Kamaru Usman beat the best version of Colby Covington? I think so, but it's not out of the realms of possibility that Colby wins either.
Do you think Colby has a chance of knocking Kamaru out? Obviously, we've seen Gilbert rock Kamaru. Do you think Colby has a chance of TKOing or KOing?
Yes. I don't think with Colby it'll be like one shot. I don't really think he's got the one shot power to do it. But with Colby, he accumulates a lot of shots. Like, he's got a lot of volume, and volume could be what does it. It's just the sheer volume. I think he could knock him out, and we did see a bit of fragility in Kamaru's chin against Gilbert Burns, but then Gilbert Burns hits like a train, so maybe not.
Yeah, I don't really see Colby. My question is, what is Colby's path? I don't think Colby can knock out Usman. Obviously, it's the fight game; anything can happen. But I think Gilbert Burns, who's a better striker, hit Kamaru pretty much with his best shot, and Usman fell, but was able to recover. Usman has a great chin. I just don't think Colby has that power. I think Colby's path is probably in a wrestling fight, and we already know what Kamaru can do on the ground. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be an insanely good rematch too. But I just don't see Colby's path. I know Colby has to have improved as well, but I think Kamaru's striking has improved so much since his first fight with Colby that I just don't see it.
It begs the question to me, for me, like, where did Colby go next? after Usman, and where does Usman go next? Does he rematch Gilbert Burns? Then he's just went full circle, beat everyone twice. But Colby Covington, he just looks so far ahead of everyone else as well. What does he do? Does he just go, I'll just stick to being number 2 in the world forever? Like, if Pineiro beats him twice, it's hard to see him, Colby winning a third. So where does each fighter go after this fight? I don't know.
Same here with Colby. I don't know, but I've seen with Kamaru's interview last night. He said he'd be willing to go up to 185 if Israel wasn't the champion. And say a couple of years down the line, maybe Israel vacates and goes for a proper run at light heavyweight. Do you think Kamaru has what it takes to maybe challenge these middleweights?
Yes.
Yeah, I think Usman can definitely take out middleweights. He's a massive welterweight as it is.
100%. I think there'd be some great matchups at middleweight for him. I think that Usman won't go up to middleweight unless it's a guaranteed title shot straight away, and he shouldn't have to. But I think I'm really stuck with the welterweight division at the minute. Like Martin was saying, obviously, the next fight is Usman and Colby, and then after that, what does Usman do if he wins? Rematch Edwards, rematch Burns. I think there's only 2 or 3 fighters that Usman hasn't defeated in the top 10, and I think those are Wonderboy Thompson, Michael Chiesa, and Neil Magny, I believe. And those guys aren't getting title fights yet. Wonderboy, maybe if he can defeat Burns in good fashion, but I'd argue after the Colby fight, if Usman wins, if Leon Edwards can get a convincing win over Nate Diaz, he's next in line.
I think there's still 2 names if Usman beats Colby, and that's Wonderboy if he beats Gilbert Burns. That'll put him in the top 2 or 3. And then Edwards, it's almost kind of a tough fight against Diaz because if he wins it, people still aren't going to respect him. People are still going to say it's Diaz. He hasn't fought in so long, and he comes and goes. But I know the Bilal Muhammad fight was no contest, and who knows where that fight was going, but it looked like he was going to dominate that fight. So if he wins basically 9 out of 10 with a no contest, Leon definitely deserves the shot if he beats Nate Diaz.
100%.
It's actually quite bad that I forgot all about Leon Edwards. I think that's quite a testament to how underappreciated Leon Edwards actually is, because he's a world class fighter, but he's no been active enough that he's in everyone's minds. But the only fight he's had since about 2018 is the Bilal Muhammad fight, which obviously ended in an eye poke, and if it went around later, he'd lost that fight via disqualification. I think the only reason he wasn't disqualified was because it was early on in the round. But we spoke about this a wee bit earlier, just to come back to the beginning of the main card, but the Jimmy Crute Anthony Smith fight. What did you think of that? Because that fight was amazing.
I was really enjoying the fight up until when Crute's knee, ankle, whatever it was, ended up giving out on him. I thought we was going to have a competitive fight on our hands. Originally, I thought Crute was going to finish Smith just because of the power that Crute's got in his hands, but I was looking forward to a good 15 minutes of solid fighting in that one, and I think we would have got it if Crute's knee didn't give out.
Yeah, I think what happened to Jimmy Crute, it was similar to what happened to Henry Cejudo, and I want to say the first Demetrius Johnson fight, because I think it was the fight he didn't win, but he get kicked. We've seen it with Sean O'Malley as well. See, like a perfectly placed leg kick in the knee, it can shut, like just below the knee on the nerve, it can shut down your whole leg, and that's what we've seen with Jimmy Crute. Because that was the funny thing as well, because like Jimmy Crute was smashing Anthony Smith with leg kicks that fight. And like Anthony Smith, he looked amazing. That's probably one of the best Anthony Smiths we've seen for a while. And the commentary team were saying that he's sorted a lot out in his personal life and he's a lot more relaxed outside the cage. And you could see that, because see when he came in, a lot of the time with Anthony Smith, you see his shoulders seem quite tense. He's a bit like a rock'em sock'em robot, like kind of like that. Whereas this fight, he looked relaxed and he looked loose. And they were saying it before the fight as well, that his coaching team were saying that he's finally starting to look like a Factory X fighter. But see the way he moves, And that was evident in that fight. His movement was great, and he was fighting tremendously off that jab. So he's a tough fucking fight for anyone.
I think with Anthony Smith, he's someone who I was kind of down on because I think since the John Jones fight, definitely against Teixeira, against Rakic, the biggest thing with Anthony Smith, you said it's like the Rock'em Sock'em, he seemed very stiff. And when he gets taken down, I feel like he doesn't have much of a ground game. He kind of curls up in a ball and just avoids damage. That jab was on fire. He kept damaging Cruz. That's what Jimmy Cruz was saying. Like, I kept walking into that jab. Eventually, I know that didn't relate to the knee, but when he's defending the jab, that kind of opens up the leg kick. And with the leg kick, it's kind of weird. I don't know. I'm sure there's like a medical term for it, but it seems like he blew out his knee, and then every time he's walking, his ankle just kept like twisting, and that thing was tough to watch. But I thought Jimmy Cruz was going to come in and knock Anthony Smith out, but he still has a bright future too. Hopefully, he gets back soon because that's like an injury that could take a while. But Anthony Smith, I want to see him fight Ankalaev because Ankalaev is on the run too.
That's quite an interesting fight actually. And it was sad to see the way Jimmy Cruz's leg was, because like when he was coming out to the second round, you could see him trying to get himself pumped up. He was banging the chest. He was trying to get, because for what I can imagine that's like is it looked like when you sleep in your leg funny, or when you sit in your leg funny and your leg goes to sleep and you try and stand up and you kind of go over it a wee bit. That's what it looked like watching at home. So I think he was like doing that, like trying to pump himself up to kind of get a bit of movement back in it, but it just didn't work. And the ref made the right call, because you seen it after, but he tried to hit the corner post with a 1-2 and fell. So you're like, there's no way he could have got in there for Anthony Smith.
100%. Like you were saying, his ankle kept rolling after, and I think I've got to give the credit to Cruz as well. He wanted to carry on fighting. You've seen him, like you said, Martin, trying to pump himself up, but when he steps back, his ankle was just giving out, and when he did the little 1-2 after on the cage and he just ended up falling, it just shown the referee made the right call, and I'm glad he did, because you don't want to see any fighters take any unnecessary damage.
No, absolutely not. And it was strange to see two fights back to back stopped by leg injuries. What did you guys make of the 17 seconds that we seen at Windman and Hall? Because I was really excited for that fight. I remember watching Uriah Hall when he was fighting on that. Was it the World Fighting League? Something like that thing that Chuck Norris was running. I remember watching. It was on like Sky Sports as a kid. I remember watching that, and it was insane. And like Uriah Hall was one of their faces. I was watching Uriah Hall for a kid. It was so good to see him in the UFC, and this was his big shot to overcome that loss against Weidman, because Weidman was the first guy ever to beat him. And for the fight to end like that, it was heartbreaking for both fighters, really.
Yeah, I just remember seeing it. Obviously, it like all the fans know, in the UK, it's hard to stay up for these events week in, week out, and I'm there almost falling asleep, just pure tiredness. And then I get pumped up for this fight, and then 17 seconds and it's done, and I'm just again jaw dropped, and I'm like, but it wasn't a good one like with the Usman. It was a shit, man. That's not good. You just seen his leg break, and then when he stepped back, you just see him fall on it. And I really wish we could see Chris Weidman come back, and hopefully if he makes a speedy recovery and can get well again, hopefully we could see the fight with Uriah. Obviously it'd be a trilogy, but technically it'd be the second fight, because hopefully then we can get a second fight of them actually throwing down and seeing what both guys have got.
Yeah, I would love to see that fight again. It's kind of weird because I think Chris Weidman possibly, like outside the injury, I think needed to win that fight, possibly save his career. Going into that fight was 2-5 in his last 7. I think there's a possibility that if he lost that fight, he gets cut. But it's almost a fluky way to lose, but it's not, because he's going to be out for probably a while. But it's a fluky way to lose, and that's not like he got knocked out. His 17 seconds in, his leg breaks. And I hope that the UFC gives him that chance. It's bad for Uriah Hall too. That loss that's not a loss that's going to get you sorry, that's not a win that's going to get you a guy higher up on the rankings. But I hope Weidman can come back. I hope that the UFC will keep him and will give him his time to get another fight, because that's the worst way to end your UFC career if that's the end for Chris Weidman.
I've seen a lot of people assuming that Chris Weidman may retire now, and I think it could be on the cards just because obviously he's 36. He like you said, Danny, he's 2-5 in his last 7, and he's just had the worst injury that you could ever imagine seeing live. So I wouldn't be surprised, but I really wish he doesn't. But I have seen quite a few people speculating that retirement is going to be on the cards for Chris Weidman.
I think so, and I think that's probably the best. I hate to say it, and it sounds really cruel, but I think it's the best thing for him, because we'd seen Chris Weidman getting absolutely bleached in his last few fights. Like, we've seen him getting some horrible beatings that you don't like to see fighters go through. So this was his last real run at the title, last real run at the UFC, and he's broke. Like we've seen with Anderson, that Anderson wasn't the same Anderson after that leg break. So if Chris Weidman, I'm not saying that what it happened to one person, it's going to happen the exact same to the other, because that's not how the human body works. People kind of repair different, all that kind of stuff. But if we're going to see a lesser version of Chris Weidman get into the octagon, then I don't want to see it. I don't want to see Chris Weidman getting knocked out anymore. He's too much head trauma as it is. Like, the fact he was still in the UFC, I thought was a bit the way it sounds really harsh to say this, because we're talking about a fighter's career, we're talking about a man's life, but I don't want to see it anymore. I don't want to see Chris Weidman continuously getting beat the fuck out of by a guy. I don't know. Yeah. It's hard.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Martin. It is hard seeing Chris Weidman, a fighter loved by so many, go through those beatings. And like you say, I want him to. I don't want him to, because I love Chris Weidman. I love watching him compete when he performs well. But I do, just because I don't want to see him take this unnecessary damage.
Yeah, it's just tough. I think it's like he's been past his prime. Because Silva, I know Silva's coming off the loss, but Silva's still, you can argue, at his peak when he broke his leg. Chris Weidman's been past his prime. He's 2-5 in his last 7, so now 2-6 in his last 8. I just think if Chris Weidman decides he wants to make a return, I would love to see the UFC give him that shot to get one last fight.
100%. I just want to ask you guys a quick question again on another fight that happened at this event. Valentina Shevchenko, obviously, she retained the title in great fashion. What did you make of it?
I was amazed. Well, I know about how good Valentina is. Like, I'm a huge fan, but for some reason, I always just associate Valentina with being a world-class striker. I always forget that she is a really capable grappler. And to see the way she manhandled Jessica Andrade, who is a tank of a human being, like she's like, do you remember those like wee pit bulls you get that are like quite small, but like that?
Yeah.
You get like the wee fire hydrant heads. That's what Jessica Andrade is like. Like, she's a wee pit bull. She's absolutely solid. She's just all muscle. I'd love to see her CAT scan and see how much percent body fat she's got. She's impeccable. But away from that, and just to see her getting absolutely mauled by Valentina, and it looked like Valentina was trying to make a point, like trying to make a statement. She was like, I'm better than you at striking, so I'm not going to strike with you. I'm going to show that I'm better at you at grappling as well. Because she said that in the build-up to the Andrade fight. She said that she's a better grappler, and a lot of people didn't believe her. So I think that might have lit a wee fire under Valentina Shevchenko, and she went, I'll show the world, and she did.
That was a tough one for me because Jessica Andrade is one of my favorite fighters, and nothing against Valentina. I think Andrade's pass was to go in and just swarm her with pressure, and Valentina's counter striking is too good. So you try to get her in the grappling. Valentina's grappling is so much better. She is so much better than everyone else in that division. You go down the list, and it's like people who she hasn't been. It's like Lauren Murphy, I think Joanne Calderwood. She's cleaned out the whole division, and it's now. There you go, Scotland connection. But she's cleaned out the whole division. It's kind of crazy now because Nunes has basically cleared out bantamweight, cleared out the few fighters in featherweight. Valentina's cleared out flyweight. So I personally would love to see that trilogy, assuming Nunes beats Pena. I know Nunes is up 2-0, but those were two close fights.
I agree. I would love to see that fight. I just feel like, see, for Valentina in that fight, it was the closest, like the Jessica Andrade fight, it was the closest I've ever seen her odds. Like, see, for a while, because to begin that fight, she was minus 400 favourite, which is still a big favourite, but she's usually minus 2,000, minus 150, no, 1.5, sorry. And it was a testament to how good she was in that first round, because our odds had went from minus 400 before the fight started to minus 1,700 at the start of round 2.
Yeah, it just proves how great of a fighter Valentina is. I remember I've watched her for a while now, and obviously she trains over with Tiger Muay Thai and various other gyms, and it just proves the training she has is top notch, and it just shows in her fights. I love watching Valentina. I think if there's anyone to beat Nunes, it is Valentina. But whether she does it or not, I don't know. But if there is one person, it is Valentina, I think, at the moment.
I love Valentina, so this is really hard for me to say, but I don't think she beats Nunes. I think Nunes is too big. I think she's too powerful. Like, we've seen Nunes absolutely ragdoll some huge women. Like, see what she done to Chris Cyborg. Like, that was insane. What she done to Megan Anderson was insane. I just feel Nunes is the best woman fighter I've ever seen. Valentina, as I said, she's second, but I just feel Nunes is too good.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think that she does defeat Nunes, but if there was one person, it would be Valentina. But I like you say, Martin, I think Nunes is just too big and too powerful.
I would agree. I think Nunes wins. It's more just like Nunes has cleared out the whole division. Valentina's cleared out her whole division. They're clearly the two best female fighters by so much that I think you could make that fight.
My thinking with that fight is, it's hard to. I know it sounds ludicrous to say because they are the two best women in the world, but is it a marketable fight? Like, if we've seen that fight pan out twice, and the same person has won both times, is that marketable?
Yeah,
I think it can be if you sell it as the two greatest women. You sell it as Valentina was a split decision. Like, I think this is different divisions, obviously, but I think you could sell Holloway versus Volkanovski if they ran it back a third time and talk about these are, with that fight, you'd say these are the two clear best featherweights right now, and both fights have been close. You can say that same thing about Shevchenko versus Nunes.
I agree. I was just doing a wee bit of devil's advocate in there. But I remember seeing a stat when Valentina was the second round, and she tied for the most takedowns in women flyweight history within 2 rounds. I thought that was pretty impressive. The one fight that we've not really touched on it a wee bit earlier, but just to kind of crown off the UFC 259. That wasn't the event number. I think I'm talking rubbish here. 264. You can tell it's been a long day. I've been up since about 9 watching these fights. Thug Rose and Zhang Weili.
I found myself, sorry to interrupt you there, but I found myself doing a DC impression. Thug Rose.
I was doing that as well.
Happened.
It's in my notes.
It happened. I was channeling my inner DC and watching the fights at 4:30, 5 a.m. I was watching them live. It was hard to stay up, but the fights kept me up. But watching that live, I think I woke the people up in my house, and I don't think they were too impressed with it. But what can you do? Thug Rose is back, and I am truly glad to see her back up there because I had Zhang winning by decision, just very close. But Rose is one of my favorite female fighters, along with Valentina.
I gotta agree. First of all, you guys are warriors for staying up every night till 4 or 5 in the morning. I could not do that. Thankfully, I'm lucky that I get to live in America. Yeah, go for it.
I watched it in the morning. I was too tired yesterday. I watched it because I recorded it on my Virgin box. So I watched it in the morning the day. I was like, too tired.
Yeah. So because these events usually like I go to bed late, but it's not. I'm not saying until 4 in the morning. Like when you say that, that's crazy. So I respect that first of all. From Rose Namajunas' thing, she's always been one of my favorite fighters. I've only been watching UFC for about a year now, but there's been a few moments that have made me really jump up out of my seat and just go crazy. I don't even know how to respond. I can confirm I did wake up other people in my house when that knockout happened. I was just screaming, Thug Rose, Thug Rose. I was so pumped because I expected a war. It's a lead leg front kick that knocked her out too. So that's just crazy. Zhang Wei Li too. I think she's still the second best strawweight in the world. I would love to see her get back out there, but that was crazy and just such a cool moment too, because I've always been a big fan of Namajunas.
Yeah, three times last night I found myself like that. Obviously, one of them wasn't something good, like the Weidman thing, which we spoke about, but for Kamaru and Thug Rose, I was just like, and then two seconds later, it was Thug Rose, Thug Rose, Thug Rose. But Thug Rose is back, and I'm glad to see it.
I found myself doing it in the Randy Brown fight as well. But see when he taps like Charles Oliveira with one armed rear naked.
One arm rear naked choke on Alex Oliveira. That was mad.
Oh, Alex, my head is away today. But he done it with I've never seen it with a one-armed.
I don't think I've seen it
before. And I must admit, I loved his promotion of his Twitch channel. He was like Joe Rogan was trying to get wee snippets of information about what happened, and he's just find it in my Twitch. I'm not telling you anything. Come over to my Twitch, and I quite like the wee bits the wee bit afters. I know you really shouldn't. I know you need to respect the art and respect the artists, but see when you've just seen a man getting choked out, right? Like one of the worst things that could probably happen to you, and then that other guy just the guy who's done it just stands up and goes, "Fuck you!" right in his face. There must be nothing more kind of demoralizing than that. Like you've just been choked out and the man's right in your face going, "Fuck you! Fuck you!" It was fun. But no, to come back to the Wee Lee and Thug Rose fight, it was the speed of that kick. Like it was it was like untelegraphed. There was no way Zhang Wei Li could have seen that coming. It reminded me of what Conor McGregor used to say. See, when he was talking about his kicks, he was saying it has to be like a whip. Well, it has to be that quick. It's not all about power. It's about getting it right in and out very quickly. And that's what Rosie's looked like. You couldn't see it coming until it was too late. And it reminded me a lot of our first fight with Joanna. But see that way where everyone thought this is going to be an absolute war, and she just comes out and starches her very early. It was very reminiscent, and it reiterated in my brain that see when Thug Rose is both physically and mentally prepared for a fight, she is the best strawweight on the planet. But I hate saying it because it does sound like Rose suffers from mental illness, but that is her undoing as a fighter as well. You heard it when she lost against Jessica Andrade. She was saying that she was glad she lost. It was like a big weight was off her shoulders. Like carrying that belt about kind of messed with her mentally, and she took a bit of a dip. It's no good to see, but the old Thug Rose looked like she was back. She was in a great place. She had Pat Barry with her. It seems, see the thing about me like her, Trevor Whitman and their wee gang, they both have a shaved head. Because I was watching them coming out and it looked like the SAS. They were all like dead bald and like dead hard looking. I was like, even Rose, I was like, that must be what you've got to look like to hang about them. But no, it was outstanding to see her back mentally as well as physically.
I think when she's motivated, she's the best best strawweight in the world. You question sometimes the motivation. But yeah, that was great to see because and we'll see what happens in her next fight. But at the moment, she seems like she's at the top of the world. Right before the fight when she's with her coaches and she's saying, "I'm the best, I'm the best." Like, first of all, that got me pumped up. But then that also just kind of shows where she's at right now. she's in a good place mentally, and she seems like she's ready to be the champion.
That's I was going to say that actually. See when Bruce Buffer is announcing their names, he's doing his thing, and it's just Fug Rose is just dead relaxed, and she's just saying, "I'm the best in the world. I'm the best in the world." She's just telling herself she's the best in the world. That's when my opinion when the fight started to switch a wee bit. I was at she's going. Listen, it was the same with Joanna. See, like when Joanna was right in her face at the weigh-ins, and Fug Rose is just standing there, so relaxed, nothing phases her, reciting the Lord's Prayer. When this woman is there mentally, she is an unstoppable force. To move away from the UFC, because we've covered the main event in great detail, I don't think we need to skitter back round that. Did any of you catch the Professional Fight League over the weekend?
I caught some of it. Obviously, I'm just gonna say I've got media credentials, so I'm gonna be at the virtual media day. I don't know when this podcast is going to be released, but for us guys, it's tomorrow, the next virtual media day. So I'm going to ask some questions on behalf of us lot. But I was buzzing for that event. Obviously, my guy Brendan Loughnane, the only guy to get a finish on the night and the only Brit representing in PFL. He's from Manchester like myself, and I was buzzing to see him in there after such a long layoff. I think his last fight was New Year's Eve, December 2019, and what a fight! I can't remember the guy's name, but he took him out in three minutes, I think, and what a win! And also the main event, Anthony Pettis, obviously didn't get the win, but what a performance by his opponent.
Was it Moraes that he beat?
Yeah. I think that's his name because it was the Brazilian guy, wasn't it?
Yeah, because that guy used to fight in the UFC.
Yes, you're right.
Oh, I see. He beat some big names over in the UFC. Aye, that's so he has that's a good win for him because he's quite friendly with Michael Bisping, isn't he?
Pardon?
He's quite friendly with Bisping, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so. I think obviously he's quite well known, obviously within the UK. I think so because I don't know if any of you boys seen last night. Ariel Helwani did this thing on Twitter where you can join. It's kind of like a voice call on Twitter. I can't remember the name of it, but there was a guy from Manchester on there with Ariel, and he didn't know who Brendan Loughnane was, and I felt personally attacked by that. A Manchester lad not knowing who Brendan Loughnane is, it was outrageous. But yeah, I think like you're saying, he's friendly with Bisping, and I think being like friendly with these well-known fighters, and especially the Manchester guys, it can't do any damage to his career, so it can only do good things. But yeah, Brendan Loughnane, he's at the top of the table for PFL, and I think I've seen him post earlier his next fight's in 5 weeks' time, and it's going to be the second fight, obviously, in the PFL season.
I must admit, I love see the coverage of PFL, see their wee stat bar down the bottom. Like, it tells you everything. You need to know how many strikes have been landed, how many punches, how many kicks, how many leg kicks, grappling time in the ground. They've got a wee section for everything. It's amazing. And then if you think it can't get any better, it tells you how fast the punches are. But you've got guys in there punching at 20 mile an hour, and you're like, what? Well, that's not a wee car.
Yeah, I've got to say, this was the first time that I've watched PFL because I wasn't massively too much into different promotions of MMA last time PFL was on. But now I'm watching every bit of MMA I can. But watching it, I was really surprised because I didn't know that they did things like that. And they also have the referee wearing the glasses where you get the referee cam on them. And I thought that was a good touch as well. But yeah, I agree with you, Martin. I love watching the coverage of PFL now.
Could you imagine listening to that? If he's like reffing the heavyweights, it's just Francis Ngannou's balls.
So I had to miss most of this card, unfortunately, because I had like some baseball stuff going on, but I was able to watch the Pettis fight. One thing I would love to see PFL experiment with open scoring. I feel like they already kind of do some new things that to try out, and I think open scoring is something that I'm all in favor of. I'd love to see them try it out. I think if there's a promotion that would go for it. I know LFA's done it a few times when they were in various parts of America, but I would love to see PFL try that out.
That'd be pretty interesting, to be fair. And I think they're the type of promotion in MMA now that they're willing to kind of try things that no one else is willing to try. They're looking to kind of push the boundaries and go against the norms, even the way it's all lined out. What is lined out like a classic American league table, rather than like knockout. Like it's more like a league rather than like a knockout tournament, if you like. So even at that, that's gone against the grain a lot. So I don't think open scoring's out the realms of possibility, and I would quite like to see it. I agree. But I was quite sad to see that Lenz Palmer lost.
Yeah, obviously against Bubba Jenkins, I believe, but it just shows what a fighter Bubba is as well, and I'm looking forward to seeing. Well, I'm sure both guys are going to be fighting in 5, 6, 7 weeks, because I know this week, well, at the time of recording, it's next week, obviously Thursday. At the time of recording, there's the Rory McDonald card. Then the following week, there's Fabricio Verdum. And then I think they've got a month or so out, and then the return. And obviously that's when Clarissa Shields is going to be fighting. And that's going to be when the second half of the season for PFL is going to be taking place. So obviously Anthony Pettis is going to be back for another fight. Bubba Jenkins, Lance Palmer, all them guys, they're all going to be back.
Yeah,
I'm so excited. Clarissa Shields. Sorry to cut you off there. I think
that's fine.
Sorry, I think she's the real deal. I know she's at 155, and UFC doesn't have a 155-pound division, but I think if she can rack together some wins, and if she can at some point make 145, I think she is a legitimate threat to Amanda Nunes, just based on how good her striking is. She obviously has to like get a grappling game, and we haven't seen her in MMA yet, but she is a force to be reckoned with.
Oh, no doubt. I'm really excited to see Clarissa in there, just because of the boxing credentials she's got as well, and I'm also interested to see what a ground game is going to be like, because I can't remember who they've announced to fight in. I know they've announced it, but I'm not sure who. But I'm sure she's going to probably take it to the ground and test Clarissa's ground game, and it'll be interesting to see what she's got on the floor.
Yeah, definitely, and I quite like the way PFL run it. So it's like one week it's like the lightweights and the featherweights, like we've seen on Friday, and then next week it's like the Rory McDonald one. It's the welterweights and the middleweights, and then you get all the heavyweights and all the light heavyweights. I quite like it like that. But it's interesting to get to see everyone for the one division on the same card. I quite like it. It's easier. But they've just been bought out, like their new president's Wiz Khalifa. I love that.
Yeah, I don't know, because I'm gonna have to wait a couple of months to see what he does with them and see what, if anything, changes. But I think it may get more eyes on them just because it's Wiz Khalifa, but also does Wiz Khalifa know enough about MMA and the running business side of things to be able to do that stuff? Is he going to be able? I know no one's going to be able to do the type of things Dana White's doing, but is he going to be able to replicate anything of that, being the president of PFL? I don't know, but I'm intrigued to see what's happening in the next couple of months with Wiz Khalifa and the PFL.
I like it because I think sometimes just bringing in these big names almost kind of brings attention to it. Like, just another example, like a Snoop Dogg being on Dan White's Contender Series. Like, people recognize the name Snoop Dogg, people recognize the name Wiz Khalifa. That'll bring in people and kind of like, oh, okay, this is Wiz Khalifa's fight league now. Not necessarily knowing about the fighters, so it just kind of helps to grow the sport. Obviously, it's not going to be like Dana White, and Wiz Khalifa probably doesn't really know how to run the business well, but I think just having that big name can kind of bring in an audience.
And I think it's very similar to what Bellator done. Do you remember Bellator was basically being run by 50% for a while, and he was putting up money for like the tournaments that they were doing. Like, see the Grand Prix, it was 50 Cent that was putting up the £1 million to pay the fighters. So, and that worked tremendously well for Bellator. If you could argue, like Bellator's doing phenomenal. So I think it is, and that this is what appointments that that's all about. It's about bringing fresh eyes to the sport, like people who would never have watched MMA before might start watching MMA now because Wiz Khalifa's running it. And I think that's kind of the reality of marketing. Like, to bring new eyes to the sport, you need to be essentially revolutionary with how you go about it. Like, if Wiz Khalifa can bring a small percentage of his following to MMA, MMA is going to have a lot of new fans. So hopefully that's how that goes. I feel bad we've not really touched a lot on the PFL this week, but I missed it on Friday, so I can't. I've got nothing really to talk about. I've just seen the results today. I seen that Tyler Diamond won. I like that. I like Tyler Diamond in the Ultimate Fighter. He was really cool. So to see him doing well, I quite like. But it annoyed me that the UFC never signed him. See, just because he lost on like the Ultimate Fighter finale, that kind of stuck in my craw a wee bit. But so we'll take a route back to the UFC and we'll talk about Israel Adesanya and Marvin Vettori being confirmed for UFC 263. Also, my boy Paul Craig has been confirmed to fight on that card as well. He will face number 15 in the world, Jamal Hill. Jamal, they were scheduled to fight last month, but Jamal Hill pulled out due to catching coronavirus. So the fight has been rescheduled for the summer, and for one, can't wait to see it.
Yeah, I believe Paul Craig's going to get the win on that one. I don't know how, but I think he'll get a stoppage win. But in regards to the title fight, I'm going to put it out there, and still, Israel Adesanya is going to retain that title. I'm going to look like an idiot if Marvin Vettori gets it done, but I believe Israel's going to... I think obviously, apart from Kelvin Gastelum, I believe Vettori was his hardest test at middleweight, I believe, and I'm intrigued for this fight. The one thing I don't want to happen, but I think may, is Vettori try and keep him down for 25 minutes like he did with Kevin Holland. I think that may be the case, but I think Israel is going to be able to stuff some of the takedowns because obviously Vettori is going to be more Israel's weight than opposed to Jan Blachowicz. But I think, yeah, I'm going to go with an Israel decision, but I think it's going to be a good fight.
I think Israel gets the job done. I think now one thing I know I know Robert Whittaker is going to get the chance after this, but you also never know. Like, what if Vettori versus Adesanya? You know, the guy who wins is now out 6 months, breaks his leg or something like that. You never know how that happens. I don't love that the UFC gave Vettori the shot. To be honest, I know Vettori's on a 5-fight win streak, but he hasn't. I feel like Vettori was still one signature win away. Like, not to take anything away from Kevin Holland, but Kevin Holland is not, the most impressive win. I don't think that's a win that earns you a title shot. I know he's supposed to fight Darren Till, but in my opinion, the only like elite level guy that Vettori is being is Jack Hermanson. So I just think you don't want to run that risk when Robert Whittaker has won 3 straight fights as the number 1 contender. In terms of that fight, I think some people are looking at Izzy and questioning his wrestling, but Vettori's obviously a great wrestler. But compared to Blachowicz, it's a weight thing. The narrative that Izzy can't wrestle, that's flawed. I mean, we saw Izzy early in his career took out Derek Brunson in 4 minutes. Yoel Romero, that was kind of a weird fight, but he was able to keep that fight on the feet as well. So I think Izzy gets the job done, probably by decision, maybe a knockout.
I think the reason that Robert Whittaker didn't get the fight is because being champion, Izzy has the luxury of kind of picking when the fights are going to take place. And he wanted to fight in June, whereas Robert Whittaker couldn't make that card. Like he's just fought not long ago. He might have been, but Robert's been kind of plagued with injuries. He might just be wanting to spend some time with his family. I'm not 100%. But that was the reasoning that they gave, was because Robert couldn't make that date. So Israel being champion kind of gets what he wants. And they made the Marvin Vettori fight, which, in my opinion, it's a great fight. But I agree with everything you are saying. I don't think Israel Adesanya getting out wrestled off Jan Blachowicz, who was about 20, maybe 30 pounds more than him on the night. makes him a bad wrestler. Like we've seen some of the guys that he's beat. But if he was that much of a bad wrestler, how did Marvin Vettori no beat him the first time? Like, how did this? I know both of them have obviously improved as a fighter, but if he's so bad at wrestling, like people are making out and people are trying to say this is his Achilles heel, which annoys me when a fighter loses. It really drives me insane. But I think Izzy is now in the same position as Kamaru Usman. He's beat everyone, and now he's going to have to go full circle to get fights. Like after if he beats Vettori, he'll then need to fight Robert Whittaker. That's two guys that he's already beat. The only guy in that division that he's not really beats Darren Till. And who knows when Darren Till's going to be fit to fight, because he's absolutely demolished his collarbone, and he'll need a couple of fights to get there, a couple of wins to get there. And can Darren Till get a couple of wins together? Maybe, but I also wouldn't be shocked if he didn't. So where does this really go? Again, it's got to get a bit muddy for him with a couple of fights, but I'm sure he'll cross that bridge when he comes to it.
With these welterweights and middleweights at the moment, obviously it's a bit of a sticky situation. Obviously, after the Vettori fight, if Izzy wins, and then after Robert Whittaker, if he wins again, where does he go after that? Like you say, Darren Till's going to have to get 1-2 wins on the board to warrant a title shot. And who does Till fight when he comes back? Does he fight Vettori if Vettori loses? Does he fight potentially Derek Brunson, Jared Cannonier? Who knows? There's exciting matchups for the people that aren't champion, but for Izzy, he's more or less beaten the people at the moment.
I would give Darren Till Paulo Costa. I like to see that fight. I adore Paulo Costa. He is one of my favourites, and the man is massive. He's like a walking advert for horse meat.
I think I'd love to see that Brunson versus Costa fight, because it's, striker versus wrestler. I think the winner of that could get or maybe sabotage shot. Another thing they would factor in, the forgotten guy in the division right now is Jared Cannonier, but Cannonier got called out by Izzy after Izzy beat Paulo Costa. So I think you could have Darren Till fight Jared Cannonier. The next two guys to fight Izzy are Vettori and Whittaker. Let's say Izzy defends twice. I think the winner of that Cannonier-Till fight could get a shot, because Izzy clearly isn't in love with the idea of rematches, and those are the top two guys he hasn't fought yet.
I think that's a really hard fight for Darren Till. Like Cannonier, he hits like a truck. But the man used to be a heavyweight as well. He's one of the few guys to fight at heavyweight, light heavyweight, and middleweight. He was hanging in at heavyweight and he was knocking heavyweights out. So he will give Darren Till, like we've seen Darren Till be knocked out by the likes of Jorge Masvidal. So I think that's a real tough fight for Darren Till. I know Darren Till was depleted when he fought Jorge Masvidal. He dropped all the way down to welterweight, which wasn't great for him. Those kind of long cuts, it makes you more sustainable to get knocked out because you're losing the water going to your brain. So that could maybe play a part in it. But I just think what Cannonier is a tough fight for anyone. That is a really good fight, actually. So we'll go away for that. What do you think of Lewis versus Ngannou 2? Are you liking it? Are you hating it?
So I gotta say, Derek Lewis is my personal favorite fighter. So that's gonna be, and I love Ngannou too. His story is incredible. So I love that fight. I see Derek Lewis getting knocked out, unfortunately. I think Ngannou with that first fight, Ngannou I think is clearly the better fighter than Lewis. I think the Stipe loss kind of fucked with him mentally. And I think that's why in the first Lewis fight, I think he threw like 20 strikes in the whole fight. I think Francis Ngannou is at the top of the world right now. I think he wants that John Jones fight. And Derek Lewis, he kind of sees as, I guess, sort of a bump in the road or whatever. But I think Derek Lewis gets knocked out by Ngannou if they rematch.
We seem to have lost Mason, but I'm sure Mason will jump back in. We can carry on. Yeah, I think Ngannou wins it. I think the first fight was obviously Derek Lewis had a back injury as well, so I think that was kind of his reasoning for.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, apologies about that.
No, that's fine. I think in the first fight, we were talking about Derek Lewis versus Ngannou. I think the first fight, like the reason it was so bad was because Ngannou came off the first loss of his career with Stipe Miocic. We've seen how that fight went. Derek Lewis he had injured his back as well. But what I don't like Francis Ngannou was saying last night that he still wants that John Jones fight and he still thinks that fight's happening. But what I don't like is there's been a lot of conversation around fighters' pay and fighters not getting enough money. And I totally agree with them. I don't think UFC fighters are paid enough. See for the job they're doing, see for how much money this company is valued at. Because I was looking at the figures today, and the company is valued at $7 billion, right? Dana White has sold because he's now sold all his shares, so he doesn't own anything in the UFC. He sold his whole shares for a combined £4.5 billion he made of selling his shares that he bought for 1.5 million back in 2001. So we know how much this company is worth. And for them to still be underpaying fighters, not to get too political on it, but I think it's quite shambolic. But if the UFC aren't paying fighters enough money, right? So a fighter's not going to take the fight for not enough money. And you get people who are willing to jump in and undercut these fighters, which you're seeing Derek Lewis is doing. And he put, fair play, Derek Lewis has no loyalties to John Jones. I respect that. I appreciate that. He's got no loyalties to John Jones. But when John Jones is in contract negotiations, trying to get the best money for his product, because this would be the biggest fight the UFC has ever seen. Like John Jones versus Francis Ngannou. You've got the UFC's version of Mike Tyson against the best ever. The fight's going to be absolutely a huge. John Jones coming to heavyweight to fight. It is just going to be amazingly big. And he wants 30 million. Seeing the grand scheme of prize fighting, 30 million is not a lot of money. So when he was making his demands, I think at first it was rumoured that he was wanting 11, 12 million, say. And Derek Lewis is tweeting saying he'll do it for 7.5. How are fighters supposed to get the money that they deserve when there's other fighters willing to undercut them every opportunity? Imagine this. Imagine you're somebody that's looking for a contractor, and the guy's saying that he'll do it for £100, £100 great pounds sterling, and another man's going, no, I'll do it for £75, but it's the same job. You'll take the one that costs less, and until fighters start having other fighters' backs, fighters are not going to get what they deserve.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Martin. Obviously, we've seen John Jones with the demands that he wants, and he warrants these demands. Obviously, he's one of the biggest. This is going to be the biggest fight of all time, I reckon, if it goes ahead. And John Jones is the greatest fighter, and I think he can demand this sort of money just because. Look at boxing, for example. Obviously, you've seen the pay that those guys are getting, and I'd argue that some of the UFC fights are bigger than some boxing fights now, just because how much MMA has grown and how much everyone is paying attention to the sport. And I think John Jones, I don't think he'll get 30 million, but I think he deserves 30 million. But I'm going to quickly go off topic of the money side. Kind of. I think John Jones wants that amount of money as well, just because it's Francis, because he's taking a big risk against Francis. And my honest opinion is, whether it's John Jones or Derek Lewis, I think Francis steamrolls them both.
Oh, that's a hot take. That's your second hot take of the day, Mason. I agree with what you're saying. I think he's asking for 30 million because it is Francis Ngannou. Because prize fighting, you need to weigh up the risk versus reward. I mean, you're going in against Francis Ngannou. Like, we've seen what Francis Ngannou has done to people. See what he done to Alistair Overeem, Rosenstrike, what he's just done to Stipe Miocic. That isn't something that just goes away. This is getting punched in the head with such a force that the later impacts it can have on life and your career, it can shorten your career by maybe five fights. But it is severe head trauma Francis can put you through. So I think for John Jones to say that he wants 30 million, he's not scared of Ngannou. He's just wanting to weigh up. This fight might not go the way I want, but this fight might end bad for me, and I really need compensated. And I agree with that. I don't like John Jones is at the peak of fighting. He is not scared of anyone, and that he's a man that fights in a cage. He is not scared of Francis. He wouldn't have moved up to heavyweight if he was scared of Francis. And for those that are saying that he is, I feel that's very disrespectful. So I just wish the UFC would pay the money. I really do. See if we miss this fight with a company that's valued at $7 billion because somebody wants 30 million. I'll be heartbroken, man. Like, they'll make well more than that off the pay-per-views. Like, I don't know.
I think a part of it is where these guys are at in their careers. John Jones, to a certain degree, doesn't have too much left to prove. I think going up to heavyweight, and if he can win that title, that would just add to his legacy. He's already the GOAT, in my opinion. And whereas Derrick Lewis is Derrick Lewis is 36. He's been around. He has the most knockouts in UFC. I think he's tied for the most knockouts in UFC history, but he's never been champion. He's fought for a title, lost to DC, but I think, Derrick Lewis is not someone who maybe the average person has heard of, but John Jones is a huge name. And, I think with the Dominic Reyes fight, like before the pay-per-view sales came in, I think he only made $500,000 on that fight. So I think John Jones is saying, this is going to be the biggest fight of all time. And it's known for years that you guys kind of underpay people. So you're going to give me a big contract if I'm coming back. I think, the thing that pisses me off even more than John Jones not getting his money, like these guys on the prelims, they make $30,000 to fight, $30,000 to win. And, Dana White is openly saying he'd put $1 million on Ben Askren. Like, I think where Dana spends his money, where the UFC spends his money, it's ridiculous. And, I like what Dana does for the company. No one could run the sport the way Dana White has. But Dana White does a lot of things that piss me off. I think that's kind of the case for everyone. But the biggest one for me is underpaying fighters.
Absolutely. I agree with you wholeheartedly there. Like, those on the prelims, they don't get what they deserve. And see, what 60,000, when you say that out loud, it sounds like a lot of money. But see that they need to cover a lot of their medical bills for that. They need to pay any flights that they're having, kind of stuff like that. Training, coaches, the managers get a percentage. They need to pay their tax. If you live in America, if you're fighting in America but live in the UK, you need to pay tax in America and in the UK. So you're getting hit with a double bill of tax. You need to pay your coaches. You need to pay for training, facilities that you use, all that kind of stuff. So that amount of money, and that's to do you kind of all year as well. But see, unless you're fighting very regular, like 3-4 times a year, that's to do you for a long while. And you've still got all your bills at home to be covering. So it is a bit shady how little they get. But it seems like we're to be talking about how that fight would go, and it just ended up, and I was going to rant about John Jones, which I like. So if they were to fight Ngannou versus Lewis 2, who wins?
Ngannou dominant knockout.
Against Jones or Lewis?
Lewis, sorry.
Wait, say it one more time. So sorry.
Lewis, sorry. Derrick Lewis. Oh.
Okay. Wait, I'm so sorry. It's about Lewis versus Ngannou?
Yes, who wins?
Oh, sorry. I have to pick Ngannou here. I love Derrick Lewis. He's my favorite fighter. I have to go with Francis Ngannou.
Yeah, I would probably go the same. I would see if they're doing it. I hate slag Keith Peterson's height twice in the one night, but I think they should make Keith Peterson the referee. Could you imagine Keith Peterson trying to pull Ngannou off Derek Lewis, or trying to pull Derek Lewis off Francis Ngannou? It'd be hilarious.
Oh, I'm going to ask you, John Jones and Ngannou, if it ever happens, who do you think will win?
I'll go with John Jones. I think John Jones gets it done. I know it's not the common take here, but I actually do think John Jones lost to Reyes. I think you can argue he lost to Santos as well. But he's putting on weight, and I think his ability to control range. I know Francis Ngannou has long reach too, but Francis Ngannou has a long reach and he's a massive guy. John Jones has a big reach with long legs. And I think with his kicks, and I just see John Jones being able to get the job done, especially if it's in a bigger cage. Like if it's at the Apex, that's a big advantage for Ngannou. But if it's at a big arena like it was last night, which it obviously will be, I think John Jones gets it done by decision.
I think Francis knocks him out. Wild prediction, I know, but I think Francis steamrolls both. I don't think he steamrolls John, but I think he knocks him out.
And I should say too, like I'm rooting so heavily for Ngannou to knock out John Jones in that fight. Like with all the shit that John Jones has pulled in the past years, and now his contract stuff and his Twitter just annoys me. If Francis Ngannou knocks him out cold, that would be so satisfying. But I do think Jones wins that fight.
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I've been sitting here and my mind's blank. Like I can't pick a name. It's just I feel Ngannou could knock him out early. He could do that. John Jones could wrestle him to the ground. John Jones could submit him. John Jones can keep his range. Can do that. The oblique kicks, grapple, take him down, work his magic on the ground. I feel this fight's on a knife edge for me. Like there's too many variables that I've not seen from John Jones at heavyweight. Like I've not seen how John Jones's speed is at heavyweight, how John Jones grapples with a heavyweight. I haven't seen any of that yet to make a real kind of informed decision. So I think if Francis is going to fight Derek Lewis, I would want to see John Jones and against a Cyril Gane.
That'd be a crazy fight, Cyril Gane, because they're very similar fighters. I think kind of rangy guys who control range. And Cyril Gane, his last fight was underwhelming, but I thought that was on Rosenstrike for not coming forward. I would love that fight between Jones and Gane, but I think when you have a name like John Jones, you give him the title fight right away.
That's what I feel as well. I feel John Jones isn't a guy who's going to go and fight somebody at 6-0, but he's 7-0 now, I think, Cyril Gane. I don't think he's going to take a fight like that. There's too much risk in it for John Jones, especially at heavyweight. I think it's only Ngannou that can get him out of bed. But see if we see, let's see, we spoke about there about the Santos fight and the Reyes fight. I didn't see a wholly motivated John Jones for those fights. I think John Jones was just kind of getting through the motions a wee bit. I think light heavyweight had become stale for him. He had won so many fights there that it was just another day at the office. Whereas he's now taking a step up and perhaps facing the scariest UFC fighter of all time. We could see the best version of John Jones we've ever seen. And it's very exciting.
I think the only other name I can see John Jones maybe fighting is Stipe, and I don't know if Stipe would come back. I think Stipe, if he comes back and doesn't retire, I think it's probably going to be for a championship. So maybe if John Jones wins, then Stipe fights him. But I think in terms of a tune-up fight that John Jones would be fighting, but I don't think he would take a fight as Cyril Gane, but I don't think he's going to take that fight.
See, with Stipe, I want Stipe to take a long way off because how he was knocked out. You don't want to see him coming back too early, his chin not to be fully back to 100%, and for that to happen to him again. I don't like seeing people get knocked out like that. I know it's what we pay our money to see, but see when it's guys, it's happening 2-3 times in a row, you really don't like to see it.
Yeah, I think with Stipe, it's almost similar to, like we were talking about at the beginning of the show, Chris Weidman. It was hard seeing Stipe get beat the way he did, and obviously, like we was talking about Chris Weidman, it's tough seeing him get these devastating defeats and get beaten up like he has been in his recent fights. But with Stipe, like you say, Martin, I don't want to see him come back too quick. And to be honest, I want to see him come back because I want to see him come back because I love watching him like Chris Weidman. But at the same time, I don't, because I don't think he beats Francis. And I think the fight for Stipe, if he does come back, is Derrick Lewis, if Derrick Lewis doesn't get the title shot.
I must admit though, I really like Francis with Usman in his corner. Like Usman just see now, like Francis is see when he first fought Stipe, he was still fighting in France. Like he was at that gym, he was at one of the gyms over there, but now he's at Extreme Couture. He's got he's at an elite camp now at Extreme Couture. He's got a lot of training partners to choose from. He's now in the position that he can fly people in to train with him as well. So I really like that aspect of Francis. But just for him to have someone like Kamaru Usman in his corner, who is wrestled since he was a kid, and you heard that in the first fight, like Kevin was talking about this in the last podcast, like you could hear Usman in the corner going, calm down, just calm down. And then he was telling him what to do. He was like, right, sprawl, sprawl, sprawl. And it worked really well for Ngannou. Like, I made the joke after the fight, like Ngannou learning takedown defense is the scariest thing to happen to the heavyweight division since USADA. And I stand by it. I think if this man can continuously takedowns, no, whatever you got, that's the one blueprint he beat Francis out the window.
100%.
He's like Danny, you were talking to this the man a couple of days ago, Yuri Pekranska. You can catch that on our YouTube channel. How do you feel his fight goes at the weekend with Dominic Reyes?
Yeah, that is such a good fight, and we haven't seen Yuri since his debut, so he's kind of in a tough spot where he's obviously legitimate. He was a risen champ. I'm so excited for that fight. I am rooting for Yuri just because I interviewed him. It's kind of be super cool for me to see that if a guy I interviewed become champ. But I think another thing with Yuri is it's two guys who can knock each other out, but we've seen it. We just saw Reyes get knocked out by Blachowicz. You kind of wonder sometimes at the chin, has he fully come back? Has he fully recovered from getting knocked out? But also, I mean, Dominic Reyes has lost 2 fights. You can easily argue. I thought he beat John Jones. And then Blachowicz is obviously a tough fight. So I think it's a huge fight for both guys. I think if Yuri wins, it kind of proves that he should maybe already get a title shot, and if not, is going to eventually get a title shot. If Reyes wins, it proves he's still up there with the elite light heavyweights.
I must admit, I absolutely love Yuri Pekranska. I think he's amazing. I really hope that he wins at the weekend. He's slowly became one of my favourite fighters. I think he's so good. And see, just to see him going through the same kind of path as Israel Adesanya went, where the UFC approached Pekranska quite a while ago and wanted him to come fight on their show. Like, I don't know if this was maybe 2015, 2016. They were wanting Yuri Pekranska, but he turned them down. He said that he wanted more time to learn the craft and become more a perfected martial artist before he comes to the UFC. And see, just hearing things like that, what fighters having that kind of intellect and not jumping at the first opportunity, it's very impressive, and it shows how mentally strong they are. And that's sometimes the difference maker in fights.
I think the winner of Yuri and Reyes will fight the Alexander Rakic, and then the winner of that fight will fight the winner of Jan and Guelva.
I'm just thinking of Yuri Pekranska. I know I'm looking ahead here. I'm looking through Dominic Reyes, which is a shocking thing to do. You should never do that in fights. But I was just thinking, how good a fight would Rakic and Yuri Pekranska be, just for like a pure kickboxing point of view? I think that'd be amazing.
I think it's also kind of the nature of the fight. If Yuri Prochazka goes in and knocks out Dominic Reyes, you can argue that he should get the title shot because Rakic is coming off a win. He's on win streak, just beat Thiago Santos, but it was a lackluster fight that he beat Santos. And whether or not this is how it should be in the fight business, you have to win. If you win and knock someone out, that will get you farther than winning a decision fight. So I think if Prochazka goes in and knocks out Reyes, you can argue he's already next. But if he wins by a decision or it's maybe not a great performance or whatever the case is, then I think you maybe open up that Rakic fight. Just for me, with the issue with Rakic is that he beat Santos, but it was a lackluster fight. It wasn't a fight that he looked particularly great in.
I think the only kind of issue with that is that Jan Blachowicz is already scheduled to fight Glover. And is it September they're scheduled to fight?
Yeah, September 4th, I believe.
That's, see for Yuri, that's a bit of a wait. If he wins via knockout, whereas he could get another fight in there before September, but he could maybe fight August. Or he could fight in that September card if he wanted to be backstage. And that gives him 2 fights now. Before, if he gets through Dominic Reyes, of course, which is obviously no easy task, that would give him 2 fights before Jan Blachowicz rather than the 1. And I'd like to see him do that more than wait.
That would make sense because you're right too. Is that I kind of forgot about that. That is a long layoff, I think, and I know with Blachowicz, he took 6 months after beating Dominic Reyes, and then 6 months after beating Izzy. So let's say he wins again. We could be looking at next March. So I do agree with that. I don't think a 10-month layoff after Prochazka is currently on an 11th month. I think 11-month layoff. So I think a 10-month layoff if he knocks out Reyes, that wouldn't make sense. So now that I'm thinking about it, I think you probably do have him fight Rakic.
There you go. Mason, get you a job as UFC matchmaker. Dana White's already fell out with Sean Shelby. It's all right. You're covered, mate.
Get me on there.
Is there any other fights in the card that jump out at you? Because I really like the look of the Thai fighter, Woma Lukabomi. She trains over with Casey O'Neill at Tiger Muay Thai. She's a 3-time Muay Thai world champion. Her only UFC loss against Angela Hill, who's really good. It's no shame to lose to Angela Hill. So I think Woma could be quite interesting for the division.
Yeah, that's a great fight. Sam Hughes, I think, could actually has a chance in that fight. She looked good. I believe in LFA. It was a different promotion. I think it was LFA. And then tough assignment, her first fight on like 5 days' notice to fight Tisha Torres. That's a tough fight. She lost. But I think the odds, I'm looking at it right now, the odds, Loma Luke Bona, Luke Bonami, I don't know if I said that right. But she's a minus 350, and I think that the odds should be a little bit closer to even. That's a great fight. My favorite other fight outside the main, I love this matchup between Kai Kamaka and TJ Brown. I interviewed both those guys. Kai Kamaka reminds me a lot of Max Holloway. And obviously not as good, but he will just destroy guys with pressure. He's not going to knock you out, but he'll land 5-punch, 6-punch combinations. TJ Brown is a really great grappler. And I think that fight is bound to have a finish. That one's a fight I could totally see becoming fight of the night.
I agree with Danny. I'm really looking forward to the Kai Kamaka fight. I think I don't know who, but I agree with Danny. I do think there's going to be a finish in that one.
Yeah, that's quite a good fight now that I'm thinking of it. Because the co-main event's quite interesting as well. Cub Swanson's fight.
That's a great fight. I think Giga Chikadze just entered the rankings too because Zabit got removed. And Cub Swanson's guy, I don't think Cub Swanson has ever been in a bad fight. So I think that one should be fire. Because I get that right. Giga Chikadze is in the top 15, I believe, right now.
Yeah, I think we were talking about this off air. Yeah, because Zabit, bit of breaking news for you. This podcast probably won't go out for a couple of days, so it's yesterday's news. But as we're saying it, breaking news. Zabit and Zabit. Oh, here we go. I'm going to try and pronounce his second name. Zabit Nurmagomedov. I've absolutely ruined it.
Magomed Sharipov.
Magomed Sharipov. There we go. He's now been removed from the rankings, as Raging Alayaquinta due to inactivity. So we'll hopefully hear more on how that story develops. But it's a bit. Zabit's got a big following. Like everyone was wanting him to fight Max Holloway next. And there seems to be a lot of issues with him getting that fight with Rodriguez. So we'll need to see how things play out. Hopefully, it's just similar to what they've done with Leon Edwards. It's just a bit of a power play, and we'll see Zabit back. Because I'd hate to see the promotion lose Zabit, because he's got a lot of potential.
I think one of the first thoughts I had, first of all, it's kind of weird how they remove some guys but keep others. Like Yair's had a longer layoff. There's some other guys who've had longer layoffs than Zabit. When I first saw Zabit removed from the rankings, the thing about Zabit, he's probably not going to get a title shot next, and I don't know if Holloway wants to fight him. I think Holloway might wait till see the winner of Volkanovski Ortega. I would love to see Zabit fight Arnold Allen. Arnold Allen's a guy who's not a huge name. He's not always the most active guy, but he's 8-0 in the UFC. That can't get overlooked. And I think Arnold Allen is now 7th or 8th in the rankings. I'm not sure the exact number because he just moved up. But was a guy who, coming off his last win, I was looking at who he could fight next. And I was thinking Kattar or Emmett, because I didn't think a guy like Zabit was maybe too far ahead of the rankings for them to place him with Allen. But now that Zabit's off the rankings, Zabit's in a tough spot. He knows he's not going to get a title shot. He's probably not going to get Holloway. So if you're Zabit, you might as well take a fight. And Arnold Allen is a guy who's 8-0, so I love that matchup.
I would quite like to see Arnold Allen against a Calvin Kattar, but I would also like to see him fight the winner of Shane Burgos versus Barbosa. I think if it was him versus Shane Burgos, we've got a real barn burner of a fight, and I would be so excited to see that. Oh, him versus Shane Burgos would be so good. But for Arnold Allen, what I want for him next is I want him to fight a big name, because Arnold Allen is kind of in the same position as Leon Edwards, as where his fights like a lot of time he's quite dominant with how he wins. But as we were talking about earlier in the show, to get real recognition by fans and by Dana White, rightly or wrongly, you need to have big knockouts. You need to be finishing people. And Arnold Allen isn't doing that. A lot of his fights, he's dominating, but he's winning via decision. And that doesn't always bring the masses in. The masses want to see me knocking people dead with one punch. They want that, and that's just the way it is. That, and he seems a really nice guy. Like, he's not trash talking. He's not talking shit on Twitter. He's not being offensive. He's not being insulting. He just goes about his business, and he's really good. Like, what he done to Sadiq Youssef was fucking amazing. Like, he looked so good in that fight, and there was moments that he could have finished Sadiq, but he did. But ultimately, he didn't. So I would love to see Arnold Allen get a kind of big name. So that draws me more to him fighting Calvin Kattar, because after the Max Holloway fight, everyone knows Calvin Kattar. But Calvin Kattar is now under the same branch as what we were talking about with Miocic and Weidman. We want to see him taking a long layoff, because the volume of punches that he absorbed to the head, that can't be good. And I think he's still struggling with concussions. But I was hearing something about that on a podcast. I'll need to fact. This is where we should have Makoa, because he could fact check it and prove me wrong. But I need to look into that. Sorry, but yeah, if he's still struggling for concussions, I don't want to see him going in against Arnold Allen. I don't want to see him taking more brain trauma than now. I want him to kind of rest, but I want Arnold Allen to be active. So I don't know. What about you guys? Who would you like to see Arnold Allen fight, Mason? He's a fellow Englishman.
I don't know. I'd like I can't remember which one of you said, but the possibility of Zabit would be an interesting one for Arnold Allen. I think that could be a decent one, but I don't mind who I see Arnold Allen fight. I just want to see an Englishman active and doing dents in the rankings.
Yeah, I understand that Arnold Allen's not a big name because he doesn't have this, he's not calling guys out and he's not knocking people out. But I think at a certain point when a guy's 8-0, you need to give them a fight, a top guy to get them high in the rankings. And that was kind of like Leon Edwards in a similar spot where he wasn't the most known guy, but he's on win streak, and they gave him RDA. Now it played out poorly for him, where after the fight with RDA, he was, I think, out for a year and a half, and then ends up getting Bilal Muhammad. They tried to stick him with Khamzat. Like he still couldn't get a big name after that, but he's ranked third or fourth among welterweights, deservingly so. I think you have to give Arnold Allen a chance to get in that top 5.
But I think as well, see, just for Leon Edwards, I think him fighting Bilal Muhammad has probably improved his profile, which is insane. See the way that fight ended? It got a lot of people talking. It got a lot of people talking about Leon Edwards. And then we ended up seeing Leon Edwards going on Joe Rogan, but a couple of days after. And I think his following's hugely increased since that Bilal Muhammad fight. So although it didn't go amazing for him, that we'll hopefully see him getting a big... Well, we have seen him getting a big fight next, actually. He's fighting Nate Diaz. I know Nate Diaz isn't ranked, but that doesn't always matter in MMA, especially not in the UFC. Beating a guy like Nate Diaz, that will probably do more for the fans than beating a Rafael dos Anjos. But to me,
yeah, I love the fight with Diaz for Leon Edwards because I think that's I think one of the easiest fights Leon's probably had in his career. But people know Nate Diaz because he fought Conor McGregor twice, and the Diaz's are such a big personality and kind of staples of the UFC in a way. If he wins that fight, and especially it's the co-main in a 5-round fight on a pay-per-view, I think that will certainly gain his popularity in terms of getting a shot at the title. I think if he wins that fight, he should get a shot at the title. I thought if he had beaten Bilal, he should have gotten that shot at the title anyway, and it just kind of sucks how that played out because that was good for no one. But I like the Diaz fight for Edwards because that's a big name, but not necessarily a tough fight in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think especially now that it's going to be in Texas, I believe, with the sold-out crowd of around 17,000 plus, and with it being the first 5-round co-main event non-title fight, I think that's what's going to set. That's what I think is going to set it apart from other big fights that Leon could have had. With it being Nate as well, obviously, most people know him from fighting Conor McGregor twice, but he is a big personality. And let's not forget, a good couple of years ago, he fought for the lightweight title. So Nate Diaz is more than a worthy competitor, but I'm really excited for this one, and I do believe Leon gets it done.
I quite like the prospect of Leon Edwards and Khamzat Chimaev. I really like that because as little time as Khamzat has had in the UFC, see just how game he is, like fighting twice within like 2 weeks. A lot, like twice in 10 days, was it? A lot of fans really gravitate towards him, and they all think he's the best thing since sliced bread. The UFC had him as like their next superstar. They were looking to build everything around Khamzat. I know he's been really struggling with COVID and having lung issues, but before that, like UFC were trying to build a lot on Khamzat, and see just for the kind of issues that Leon Edwards has had with the UFC, for him to take their golden boy and beat him, like beat the fuck out of him, which I think Leon Edwards would have done. I think he'd have handed it to Chimaev. I think that would have been he'd have gained a lot of fans because Khamzat is a big name in the sport now, but it's a huge kind of fuck you to the UFC, and that would have been excellent for Leon. But unfortunately, it's just the times we live in with COVID. Anyone can catch it, so that fight got called off twice for it, I believe.
3 times, I believe.
3
times. December, January, and obviously when Bilal stepped in.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Yeah, right there, Mason and Danny. It was 3 times.
Who needs Makoa when you got me?
I know. Aye. Makoa, you've been replaced. We were talking about the Chiga fight there, weren't we? And we went down a rabbit hole.
Can I throw out an idea?
Yes.
I would love to see Khamzat Chimaev fight Jorge Masvidal. I think it's big name versus big name. I don't think that would headline a pay-per-view, but I think that could either be a co-main on a pay-per-view or headline a fight night. Khamzat gets his big fight. Masvidal, I think Masvidal is gonna be in a Nate Diaz situation where he's only gonna fight these big big name, big money fights. I think that's a big money fight for Masvidal. I would love to see it.
They seem to be painting Chimaev and Jeff Neal.
I think Jeff Neal's fighting Neil Magny because they're fighting on.
Jeff Neal's been booked with Neil. Jeff Neal has been booked with Neil Magny, I think.
They were beefing a lot on Twitter, weren't they?
Yeah, I don't know what the UFC is planning for Chimaev now, because I thought he was gonna get that fight, but with them, Jeff Neal and Neil Magny being booked, I don't know what they're planning for Chimaev. But I'm gonna throw a name out there. I don't think he's booked, but I know he's not a huge household name, but maybe Michael Chiesa in the welterweight division if he wants the ranking name.
I don't think I don't think the UFC will give him that fight, because that's it isn't an intelligent fight for Khamzat to take at this stage of his career. I think Michael Chiesa is too good. As you were saying, he's not a household name. So see, it's not like if he was to lose against Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards has been talked about as like in the title picture by a lot of like head MMA journalists, like the likes of Ariel Hawari was saying he should be getting the next title fight. Whereas we're not seeing Michael Chiesa in those kind of conversations. So losing against Michael Chiesa, which I think he would personally, I think Michael Chiesa is far too good for him at the moment in his career from what we've seen, because his biggest win has came against Gerald Meerschaert. But we've seen him beat Gerald Meerschaert, Reece McKee,
and John Phillips, I think.
It was John Phillips, yes, you're right. The Welshman that fights at his SPG.
I think so.
Yeah, we've seen him fight him. We've seen him beat him. We've seen him beat Reece McKee both of them two convincingly. Gerald Meerschaert convincingly. But I just feel Chiesa is a step too far at this stage of his career, and it's not a good market move for the UFC.
I think Masvidal is the marketable name. The only other guy I could see it with is Vicente Luque. He's, I think, a more well-known name than Chiesa is, and certainly, I think, a more entertaining fighter. Nothing against Chiesa, but I think some of these wrestling guys, they want to sell Khamzat to be this big name, and I don't think that the UFC is going to want to sell a fight that could end up with a lot of wrestling. I think Vicente Luque would be a striker versus. Although Khamzat's a dominant wrestler, but I think that'd be a striking match. And I think that's the only other name. But I think if you want the big name that can allow Khamzat to move up the rankings, I think it's got to be Masvidal. If Masvidal decides to take that fight.
Yeah, I agree. But just as we were talking there as well, it seems that a lot of the hype around Chimaev has kind of died off a wee bit now as well. See when he was really active, he was fighting a lot. Everyone was talking about him. But it just seems now like he's been out. Can't remember when his last fight was Gerald Meerschaert in September, October time. Since then, he's had lung problems. He's had COVID, which has obviously caused lung problems, and no one seems to be talking about him anymore. He's retired already. He's said he's coming back. He probably retired. He's went full McGregor. But just it doesn't seem like anyone's really talking about him anymore, which is must be quite hard for Chimaev, because he was right up here in terms of fame, whereas now he's here, and it's just weird the way MMA fame works, isn't it?
Yeah, it's weird how that works, but I think once Chimaev gets a fight booked, they'll continue to push it. You do risk with that fight if you book Masvidal Chimaev and then Chimaev pulls out again. Now who does Masvidal fight? I just don't. I think that they plugged Chimaev in as the 15th ranked guy because Woodley got cut. So I think they're going to give him someone who's much higher up on the rankings. I think if you want to fight that is kind of a big name and will sell well, Masvidal's the guy. Maybe Luque. I don't know if Chiesa will sell as well.
I still want to see Masvidal against Kobe Covington.
I would love that fight. I wanted them to be the tough coaches, but I know just kind of how it played out with Masvidal fighting Usman, and then you know, Colby's fight, but
Imagine Kobe. I could just picture Kobe sitting calling him Street Judas for 18 episodes. It'd be really funny. You could just imagine Masvidal getting really annoyed and starting to hit him. But now,
yeah,
now we're seeing the possibility if Leon Edwards wins, he could maybe fight Masvidal.
that's that there was something with them at some point, right? With Masvidal onwards.
Masvidal gave him the 3-piece and a soda backstage. He punched him 3 times.
Right. Okay, I forgot about that.
Yeah, that's
That was after the Till fight, right?
yeah, it was after the Till fight. That's why they ended up, because they said they couldn't make that fight because of that. Because like Dana White's argument was that then sets a bad precedent that if you want a fight in the UFC, all you need to do is go up and attack that person backstage. And the UFC, we can't do that. Although they booked Conor McGregor. Khabib.
Alba?
Oh my God, how did Khabib's name fall out my head there? Khabib Nurmagomedov. That's how they made that fight, due to the whole kind of bus incident, Artem Lobov getting slapped. So it's a bit contradictory for the UFC, but I don't want to see guys getting fights because they attack the person backstage. It's no the way to improve combat sports and make it more marketable. So that, before we wrap up the show, because I just want to get who you think is going to win the co-main event between Chikaze and Cub Swanson. Who'd you say?
I'll let Danny go first on this one.
I like Cub Swanson in this fight. I think he looked really good in his last fight. I forget who he knocked out. It might have been Moicano. Off the top of my head, I think it's Renato Moicano. Chikaze's 4-1 in the UFC. He's looked good, but I just think Cub Swanson, if he's healthy, I still think he can. I still think he's a top 10 featherweight if he's healthy.
Did Moicano knock him out? Cub Swanson. Did he not finish him?
I think in his last fight. Let me look. It was on the. It's on the 256 card with Figueiredo. I believe.
Daniel Pineiro.
Oh, okay. Okay, you know what it is? The fight before on that same card, the fight before that, Moicano got knocked out by Rafael Fiziev. That's what I was thinking of. But
it's Cub Swanson. He's 2-4 since he beat Lobov. He's one that he's been fed to the wolves. What he fought Ortega. That's a horrible fight. Moicano was a horrible fight. Shane Burgos as well beat him. And I can't remember who the fourth person he beat him was, but it was some.
He lost to Frankie as well.
That was at Frank Edgar. So he's been fed to the wolves, and then he's been fed now been fed to this guy who's sitting at 5-0 in the UFC. Like, his only loss was on the Contender Series, which I don't really want to count because it's the Contender season. It's not really US. I hate, that's horrible to say, but I don't want to count it as UFC just because it makes my point better that he's going to win.
Yeah, I think Giga Chikadze is going to get it done.
Was it Giga that was beefing with Paddy Pimblett online?
I'm not 100% sure on that one.
Because it was him or one of the other Georgians. He was getting really personal. What Paddy Pimblett was, and he was saying like that's why the Russians own you. And it was that. It's a bit too far. But yeah, guys, thanks very much for listening at home. You've listened to us rambling for nearly 2 hours, from dissecting the fights to this weekend, to fighters not getting paid enough, to everything in between. So it's been really fun, and I hope you enjoy it when it comes out. See you later.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you so much for having me.